there's nothing more important to share these days than stories of positive change, and share stories of empowerment, share stories of what's possible. Well, I grew up in a middle class family. My dad is in the army, and my mom was a stay at home mom. I had the basics covered in my family. Had food on the table and a shelter, and a place to call home. So in that sense, it was quite stable. My sister had a lot of issues with addiction to drugs and alcohol, and ran away from home, was in foster families, like just was never able to have kind of like a united family core that was stable throughout the year. So that shaped a lot of like who I became after that, and over that period as well. Eventually, what would become kind of me 1.0 was a lot of it was based on that kind of like contrast of having, loving parents that did the best they could, and also being part of a family that was never quite in a space where we were all together at any point, because we're going to therapists, we're going to rehabilitation centers and things like that, where we would sit on these very kind of cold chairs with like neon lights, and the therapist would basically look at ways that my parents failed my sister. Kind of a one-way street of like the old school paradigm of therapy was very cold, and I it could have been just my personal experience too, but I just didn't feel held. And throughout those experiences, like no one ever came to ask me how I was doing. So I developed a very kind of like lone wolf personality from that experience of, okay, I need to figure this out by myself. I need to take care of myself, and I need to progress and challenge myself without any support of my parents, because they were drained from the whole family thing. And that was a very good description of how my years from 6 to 16 or something was. I was always a class clown, and I always had a really good grade. So like despite what was happening at home, I was still performing pretty well in the world in terms of the relationships and scholarly successes early on. So throughout my grade school and high school, it was pretty much the same. Like, I was doing well, like no one was thinking that I was not doing well. I made people laugh a lot, and, it was, relationship wise, a social butterfly a bit. I got along with the nerds and the geeks and the freaks and the sports people. And I generally like got along pretty well with a lot of people. But after high school, given I was part of a military family, I moved around a lot, and I lived in Ottawa at a time, and then I moved to Quebec again after high school, and had to start over again. So all these relationships and friends and stuff that I had gathered, like just vanished overnight, pretty much. Starting over in a new space, and going to college, and that combination was difficult for me because I wasn't able to relate as much with people back home, which is where I come from, Quebec. So that reset was really challenging for me mental health wise, because I felt alone. Basically, I felt like I was not part of a safe environment anymore. From that point on, things changed pretty dramatically for me. And I think the reason for that is that when I wasn't able to rely on myself for my resources and my care, I didn't really have anything else to fall back on, because my parents were never really quite present for me. So after that first year of college, I went into pretty deep depression, actually. Went through some really dark times of just deep social anxiety and deep depression, and had suicidal thoughts. And that lasted for a good 2, 3, or 4 years, where I would just stay in my room all the time, and I just didn't want to interact with the world anymore. So I went through this period of deep pain that was felt like a dark cloud around me all the time. And I think people around me could realize hey, something is going on, but no one really had the tools to come and say, hey, how's it going, or the capacity to really do it. So I was again on my own figuring stuff out. It wasn't until I met my current partner, Elaine, that things starting to look up more. I met her online in 1999 in a Yahoo chat room, talked online for 6 years over phone calls and ICQ and things like that. And it was really that connection that really started to uplift me out of the darkness, and uplift me out of the kind of old paradigm of my childhood. It was her that saw something in me and helped support me in an emotional and spiritual way, really, to kind of emerge out of the darkness and actually have something that was support for me and resourcing for me. And so that was, I think, the beginning of my psychedelic journey without even having touched psychedelics, was just like finding love, really. And that relationship really showed me a way that was different. And um, it was from that point on that the path began, really, for me, without even ever touching medicines. Um, and it's through that relationship that I started to mature up a bit more, or like started to come out of my shell a little bit more. But that it took a long time. I would say like it wasn't until like 7 or 8 years later that I did medicine for the first time. And it was a complete curiosity for us at the time. It was like, we were using cannabis very intentionally at the time. We're curious around psilocybin. Like that was kind of like our first foray in medicine. And I say us because a lot of our medicine path kind of like has been intermingling and crossing together left and right since the beginning. So our first journey was with psilocybin together. And frankly, nothing much happened. We just felt nausea the whole time and just didn't really have any deep experience or anything like that. Finding meaning in life. I think that was the biggest thing for me personally, was trying to access these higher levels of consciousness and trying to explore something that can give me a fresh new perspective on things. And I knew there was a lot more and to the kind of like everyday reality. But having grown in a family that was like, I wouldn't say atheist, but like not practicing of any spiritual tradition or practices. I grew up in a very kind of environment where I was never able to kind of like reach the sacred or like connect with the sacred in any way, or have a daily practice or of connection to higher energies or divine consciousness in any way. So I felt like there was something lacking in my life. I felt that it was uh, other perspectives that could really enrich this current one that I have. So it was curiosity. It was around empowerment and consciousness. I was looking for yoga teacher training. Really, I was like, oh, I want to do yoga, and so yoga was, another one of those modalities that got me out of that Pascal 1.0 version. It was like connecting with yoga, and was practicing for 4 or 5 years now, and was looking for a retreat online. And while looking for the retreat online, there was a part of me subconsciously that was like, you're looking for more than yoga. You're maybe looking for maybe a plant medicine experience. I traveled to Galiano Island, where I got out of the ferry, and this lovely lady was waiting for me, and she said, like, hey, let's have a chat before we go to the space. And we sat down, and she's like, you're here to meet grandmother, aren't you? And I was like, what do you mean grandmother? Like, my grandmother passed away a long time ago. It's like, no, grandmother Ayahuasca. And I was like, oh, okay. I kind of had a feeling, but yes, I do. I would love to meet her. And that was happening the same day I arrived. And so I got really excited, and I was like, wow, this is happening. Like, I'm finding this experience that I was looking for, the last year or two. And so I felt really blessed for that opportunity. And when I arrived to the space, it was like a different universe I was stepping into. There was, it was kind of a community of what I call rainbow warriors. They had like the pants with rainbows. They were all playing different instruments, and they were all really high vibe. And some of them lived in vans, and like it was a very kind of like rainbow like community that I would describe it as. Beyond kind of like the cliches around that, like what I found is as soon as I got there was like genuine humanity and connection with people where there's no judgment. And I remember feeling when I arrived, like, this is the first time I feel that. That's without medicine, of course. It's just feeling of belonging in a community. And one of the reasons why I felt like I belonged was not just the non-judgment, but also the deep reverence and respect that I have for people that are trying to help people heal. And so I had a deep sense of respect for the work they were doing, and immediately felt welcome, and immediately felt a lot of connection to the intentions behind the space. So it felt like a very safe space, and a very loving and kind space. And of course, it was my first ceremony, so I didn't really have any idea what I was getting into. And eventually made my way to the ceremony space, which was kind of like a circular makeshift structure that they had built on their land, where they were hanging like beautiful drapes of like different mandala patterns, and there was a very colorful space, and there was crystals and feathers, and like it was such a new world that I was stepping into as I was entering my first ceremony. But it's that backdrop of safety and that backdrop of authentic relating that really made me feel so good about being there, even though all these things were new to me. And I sat down and like had a bit of jitterness as people were kind of setting up. I was looking around, and I could see like people that were like 65 and like, more on the higher age group. And then some people like maybe 20, 21, and people that were couples, people that were single. There were, people of all different backgrounds coming in, and there was around 20 people, and just felt like it's a very diverse group. There's no quite one stereotype or one kind of like avatar for people that were there. It felt like a very communal kind of feeling where everyone is welcome. And I remember thinking like, wow, everyone should experience these things, and everyone is looking for something like that. It doesn't matter where they're coming from. They're all looking for meaning. They're all finding. They're looking for a belonging, and so all these people from different groups got together in this one space, and that again like elevated my sense of safety and warmth to be around people of diverse backgrounds, and to be welcome, and that felt really good for my nervous system. Again, coming from that Pascal 1.0, I would have never like felt comfortable in that space like maybe 5 or 6 years before that, because I would just get triggered by anxiety. Being calm in that space was healing by itself. So again, without the medicine, I already felt I can breathe, I feel safe, and I feel good in this space. And so it was looking up for the rest of the day, and they started singing songs, and they were a couple, and you can feel like their connection with love like made every sound that they made together like feel so resonant, because they were coming from a space of shared love and respect for each other. So it was really beautiful the way they were holding space. And their theory around holding space with ayahuasca is layering light on light. So there's some practitioners that really bring you down into the trauma space and really bring you down into the deep dark layers, and they operate traditionally without any lights, and they operate in a very different kind of more trauma psychospiritual realms, where you're going deep underneath your stuff to really unearth it, excavate it, and like work on it and transmute it into something else. But their philosophy was different. They were trained under a certain way of holding ayahuasca ceremonies that has light, has uplifting music that's part of it, and has a more kind of like a uplifting, empowering energy of love kind of like philosophy, which is exactly what I needed at the time, to keep working on my old stuff and kind of be shown like what's possible. So if I had gone into a different ceremony, I would have felt it would have been a lot heavier. It would have been a lot more challenging. But the experience itself like was so connecting and so beautiful and so unifying, because what happened to me in the experience was Grandmother Ayahuasca took me around the world, and I was kind of traveling over lakes and rivers and forests and different parts of the planet, where I was like feeling the ecosystems, and I was feeling kind of the animals that were there. Like I was swimming with fish, and I was like running with bears, and I was going through the whole globe, like kind of being a cosmic traveler of wilderness almost. And I was on the floor, lying down on the ground, like actually physically touching the earth. And I remember clasping my hands on the earth and just like feeling so connected to Mother Earth. And that just connected me to a space of deep connection and love that I had never felt before in my whole life. Like it was a complete reset of what my heart was capable of holding or capable of seeing, really. To this date, it's still the most beautiful psychedelic experience I've ever had. And throughout the journey, it was like the music was playing and really supporting the whole connection that I was having. For me, when I go through ceremonies, I don't sleep. So it was a good 10, 12 hours of just like reimagining or reinventing like who I was, or not even reinventing, like just like coming back home. It was like coming back to wholeness, like rediscovering like my inner self. And it was a very facilitated ceremony in the sense that it was really guided by the plant intelligence. It wasn't facilitators or even kind of me guiding it, because I was surrendering to the experience. And I think she just knows like what we need at the time. And for me, it was that rediscovery of the heart space and rediscovery of connection with others, rediscovery of my true nature. And so it was a very long experience, very deep. As much as that was special, my favorite moment of the ceremony was actually after it ended. It was morning. I was like one of the last ones in the space because everyone kind of had gone sleeping. It was like 8 a.m. or something like that. And they were kind of gathering outside. And as I was waking up, the birds were singing. It was really sunny. And I got up, and as I was getting up, people were coming back in to kind of get together again. And I remember looking in people's eyes, and I remember feeling the shared humanity. I felt so connected to them, and I could see them as me, and I could see me as them. And I remember hugging one person and just felt like there's no separation between the people that were together and the people everywhere around the world. And so as I was traveling the ecosystems through the planet with my experience, when I reached back again to humans in the morning, I approached that situation from a completely different lens. I felt deep acceptance. I felt deep love. I felt deep belief in humanity because we're so similar in different ways, beautifully different in different ways, but also very similar in some other ways. Like we all want the same stuff. We all need family, clean water, clean air, food, purpose, community. We all need that stuff. And from that perspective, I felt like a lot of my barriers went down at that moment of like, I'm not good enough. I need to be, I'm not accepted. I'm being rejected. I can't trust humanity. I don't believe in humanity. I don't want to be a part of humanity even. And that dissipated in like 12 hours of my life. And from that space was like how I really started my healing journey, my healing path, or my journey to back to wholeness was from that moment of like, we got this. We're walking the journey together. And from that space, like I was able to look at myself in a completely different lens where I could actually contribute to the world and be a part of it again from a space of like deep love and reverence for other people. You know, a lot of the issues in the world that we're facing today are issues of disconnection. They're issues of like separation. They're issues of I'm on this side and you're on this side. They're issues of like you're like that and I'm like this. And I think that's like at the source, and of course, this connection to our ecosystems and our web of life. So a lot of our problems are disconnection. So for me, it reconnected me into the web of life, and it reconnected me to shared humanity with others. And how it's changed my life is basically everything. It's helped me become a better father. It's helped me become a better friend. It's helped me become a better partner. It's helped me become more involved in my community. And it's helped me become more able to contribute in a positive way to this web of life, because I don't see myself as being at the center of it, nor do I see myself as part of a side or another. I think we're all on the same side, and if we work together, we can achieve absolutely anything. So it's changed my life in a very deep way. I think that was the first step for me to like really understand, you know, what my role is in this life and how I can contribute to it positively. So for me, integration has been a multi-chapter kind of journey that is still ongoing, and I'm still discovering new ways of integrating the insights into my everyday life. You know, a philosophy I have is that every day is a ceremony, or every moment is a chance to integrate. So I try to look at everything I do in life as like a piece of integration. And from that lens, I can, you know, approach integration as a very holistic and very impactful process that never really ends. So I'm always looking at improving things, or like looking at something that is not quite in alignment. And I try to bring those insights into everything I do, you know, the way I'm sitting, the way I'm talking to people, the way I'm eating my food, the way I'm listening to music. All of those things are like pieces of our life that we can integrate the insights on. And that's why it's a lifelong journey, because it never really truly ends. It's hard to like address all the shadows that we carry in our lives. So I try to take a very long-term approach to it. I think everyone needs to hear these stories, because we need to change policy. We need to change culture. We need to change old paradigms, old stories. We need to get over the war on drugs, and we need to give people inspiration and let people know that there are resources out there to really help them heal and feel better and live more empowered, connected lives.